Hello my Bellaboos and welcome to Sinister Sundays with me, your host, Bella Monsoon. So if you're new here, hi! On a normal day on this channel, I host a makeup and mayhem series where I use my psychological knowledge and experience to analyze and share true crime cases whilst doing my makeup. So if you want to check that out, then click up here. However, this series is a little bit different. On this side, I'll be focusing on all things strange and bizarre. And of course,
the things that go bump in the night.
From urban legends to strange sightings. If it's seriously sinister, you'll find it here. So the series is kicking off with an urban legend that I'm sure many South African people have heard of.
The legend of the Tokoloshe.
So first, I'm going to share a story with you, and then I'm going to dive into the truth behind the legend. This is why you should never sleep on the floor in South Africa. So as I start the story time, you're welcome to close your eyes, sit back and relax. It was just after 2 a.m. and Lerato tossed and turned, the hard floor uncomfortable on her back, and her cousin snoring, breaking the silence of the night. It was her grandparents' home, and the entire Tokoloshe family had traveled back there for the weekend to lay gogo to rest. But now, the home was full to capacity, with aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandchildren. So much so that she ended up sleeping on the floor with her sister and her cousins, as they were the youngest in the family and therefore last in line for the prime sleeping spots. As she listened to the crickets outside, she thought she heard a rustle by the door. She listened once again for the noise, and upon hearing it, began to rise, carefully stepping across her sleeping cousins' bodies, her curiosity peaking. She pushed open the straw door and stepped into the cool night air. As she began to take a few steps towards the bush where she thought she heard the noise, she then heard the straw door open again behind her. She spun around, thinking that she would see Lebo, her younger sister, who was always following her around. But instead, she caught sight of the back of a small imp-like creature disappearing into the house. She herself wasn't sure if it was an animal or a person. Her heart skipped a beat, and she summoned all the courage she had, creeping back to the doorway and peering into the dark space before her. The light of the full moon only illuminated parts of the room, and she could just about make out the figures of Tatenda and Tando, her cousins, and in the furthest part of the room, Lebo, her sister. They were all fast asleep, unaware of anything going on. But next to Lebo was a figure that Lerato had never seen before. It looked like a primate, but also like a small human. In the moonlit room, she saw that it was a grayish-brown color, and its body appeared to be old and withered. As her eyes traveled up its silhouette, she noticed that in place of eyes, it had gorged out holes. Her heart beat faster as she remembered the stories her gogo used to tell her. She now knew what this creature was. She realized it couldn't see her, so she remained still, holding her breath. She watched the creature lower itself onto Lebo's chest, and in the next few seconds, she heard Lebo loudly exhale, as though her chest was collapsing. Lerato knew she only had a few moments to do something, and so she screamed, "Mkhulu! Mkhulu! It's here! Help!" In that moment, its face swiveled towards her, and she noticed, for the first time, that it had a nail protruding from its head. Its teeth were yellow, crooked, and sharp. Before she could even scream again, her grandfather appeared, brandishing a sjambok and charging the creature. The next few moments flew by like a whirlwind, with children screaming, the creature vanishing through the door, and the elders giving chase. They never did catch it that night, but Mkhulu was certain that it was the reason that Gogo was no longer in this realm. And from that moment up until the day he died, he lined every entrance of his home with sea salt, which was known to keep out the creature, as well as never allowing anyone to sleep on the floor again. So Lerato's story sounds bizarre, right? But if you've grown up in South Africa, you will be familiar with headlines on signposts that are usually from the Daily Sun that go a little something like, Tokoloshe made me a sex slave, or serial killer Tokoloshe, or even crazy Tokoloshe from hell. So for those of you who are not from South Africa or have not grown up in South Africa, let me catch you up. The Daily Sun is a local newspaper here in South Africa that is well known for its outrageous headlines that often seem too bizarre to be true. But please trust me when I say this is not how all newspapers in South Africa are. But back to it. The Tokoloshe, also known as the Tokoloshe, also known as the Tokoloshe, are creatures from Zulu mythology that are said to inhabit South Africa amongst other African countries. They are also believed to be a large part of the reason why people in Zulu culture sleep with their beds raised off of the floor. So the Tokoloshe is said to be summoned by evil people to unleash wicked deeds and to wreak havoc on the lives of others. Dudlamanzi Joseph Msbini, who has been a practicing Sangoma for the past 10 years, says that the creature cannot easily be seen with the human eye. So for those of you who are not also aware of Sangomas and their role, I'm about to break it down. In South Africa, there's a significant lack of professional healthcare services. I'm talking about your doctors, your psychologists, etc., etc. So the existence of many different cultures within South Africa, combined with the limited availability of professional healthcare services, led to the rise of the indigenous traditional healer, who is now a staple intervention point for majority of people living within South Africa. So within each culture, there is a different type of healer, and within cultures, there are multiple different kinds of healers. And this is often very confusing to those who are not aware. So I'm just going to outline the ones that are important for this story, but do keep in mind there's a lot more information where this came from. Often, traditional healers like Sangomas are confused with witch doctors. So witch doctors actually focus more on dark magic, whereas Sangomas focus more on using plants to heal and the more medicinal side of healing. The other main distinction, which is quite an important one to make, is that traditional healers like Sangomas will use herbs, they'll use plants, and in some cases animal skins to make their muti. Muti is just another word for medicine. On the other hand, witch doctors may sometimes use human body parts, and thus can sometimes be implicated in murders too. So now I'm sure you can see why Sangomas don't want to be confused with witch doctors. Sangomas also believe that a persistent physical ailment can also be the manifestation of a spiritual upset. Thus, they need to address that, and they are therefore guided by the ancestors on how to solve the problem using traditional medicine. But then you also get individuals who specialize purely in physical ailments, and those are known as herbalists or inyangas in Zulu. But back to the Tokoloshe. The Tokoloshe can enter your life by taking the form of something familiar. The creature itself is said to be formed from tortured human beings who have been kidnapped. And some people claim that having night terrors is the first sign that a Tokoloshe is after you. If a Tokoloshe continues to terrorize a home or community, a Sangoma is often summoned to exorcise the area with the use of muti, as I previously mentioned. Because if left untreated, it's said that businesses, marriages, and even life can come to an end. Okay, so that's all good and well, but where did this legend even start? So the idea of the Tokoloshe as folklore could have some roots in a dark truth. So as mentioned earlier, raised beds are the #1 way to keep the Tokoloshe away. So traditionally, many South Africans who lived in rural areas that are now rife with the Tokoloshe myth and legend used to sleep on grass mats encircling a warm wood fire that would keep them warm during the colder winter nights. Sometimes, however, even healthy people would inexplicably be found dead the next morning. Well, the Tokoloshe was to blame. Right? Well, let's look at the science behind it. Sleeping close to an open fire in an enclosed space would have decreased the oxygen levels within the room, and it would have increased the amount of carbon dioxide present. This would therefore sink to the bottom of the home. The individuals were then sleeping on grass mats on the floor, and so that would potentially explain why these individuals could be found dead the next day. So a parallel was then formed between those who slept in an elevated position and a lack of death. And so the legend of the Tokoloshe was born. It then began to be told as an ominous forewarning to those who slept close to the fire and on the floor. So essentially, what kept the Tokoloshe away would also keep away death from carbon monoxide poisoning. So yeah, that explains the use of the Tokoloshe in the past. But there is another reason to explain the use of the Tokoloshe in the present. So, according to researchers and anthropologists, the Tokoloshe is frequently associated with illicit and hedonistic sexual activities, and thus often blamed for the socially disruptive effects. So essentially, the Tokoloshe is then used as a way to deflect blame and to mitigate responsibility. So this hypothesis is based on the statistics of Tokoloshe attacks, where the victims are mostly women and children who are often mutilated, raped, or killed. So essentially, this theory allows the individual to deflect self-blame and responsibility. So to fully understand what I mean, you can check out an episode I recently did on a true crime on my Makeup and Mayhem series. It was episode 13. I will leave a card up above. I covered the case of Elefasi Msomi, who was also known as the Tokoloshe killer. So now that I've gone into the legend a little bit deeper, I'm curious to know, what do you think? Do you think the Tokoloshe is real? Or do you believe that it's simply a folklore that has been used to warn children and to explain dysfunctional behavior? So thank you so much for joining me on the first episode of this brand new show. We only have upwards to go from here, so please let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And I have left a submission link in the description box, which you can use if you have any ideas for content you would like me to research and cover. So until next time, my loves, stay safe, stay awesome, and stay blessed. Bye.